How's it going, everybody? It's Joe Fox. Here's my channel where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today, I'm here to do my Fantastic Four First Steps review. Yep, it's collaborate time. So I saw the movie last week and all that stuff over the weekend. It was pretty nice. You know, I talked about it a little bit in Jay Leno's previous stream, so I'll probably put that in my community tab or something, or maybe put it a part of this video. But yeah. I'm pretty much going to share with you my thoughts. I'm going to break it down, obviously spoilers, and I'll tell you what I think about the movie. Alright, so let's get right into it. So the movie opens up with Susan Storm Richards finding out that she's pregnant and telling her husband Reed Richards about it. Then they inform the rest of the family, Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, about it over dinner. Then a montage plays explaining their brief history of how they kind of came to be, how they got their powers, and their heroic journey. All is kind of well until the Silver Surfer appears to announce the end of the world at the hands of Galactus. That's when the Fantastic Four decide to confront Galactus in space via spaceship to kind of reason with him. But after Galactus kind of offers a deal to spare Earth in favor of their expected newborn son, who will be born with immense cosmic power, the Fantastic Four reject his proposal. So as they retreat to Earth, Sue kind of gives birth to their son Franklin Richards, and the people of Earth turn on the Fantastic Four after Reed had kind of explained the details to them about them having to give up their son and everything, So Reed kind of comes up with the idea of kind of teleporting the Earth basically away from Galactus into like another dimension, but due to Silver Surfer's sabotage, he has to retool the idea to basically teleport Galactus away himself. So as the time kind of goes by, Johnny studies the Surfer and discovers her identity as Shala Ball, then convinces her to turn on Galactus later. As Galactus appears in New York for Franklin, Reed sets up a trap to kind of send him away to another dimension, but Galactus sees through the ruse and fights the Fantastic Four so that they can kind of force him into the trap. And after a long drawn out battle, Sue Richards nearly succeeds. Also, thanks to the sacrifice of Silver Surfer, they manage to push him into the trap, defeating Galactus. So Sue nearly dies from exhaustion, but thanks to her son Franklin, he uses his powers to revive his mom. Now we kind of get a 4-year time skip where Sue is alone with Franklin and Herbie and stuff, and they're visited by none other than Doctor Doom himself, setting in motion Avengers Doomsday. So basically, I'm going to talk about my cons first, or what I think was bad, before I go into the good. So basically, I will say this though. Like X-Men 97, I kind of expected the worst and the ruination of the Fantastic Four, but I'm not going to lie to you, I'm actually proven wrong this time. While I still do kind of have my qualms about what I had kind of said on the surface level, like making Silver Surfer a female, which was kind of just basically pointless, Pedro Pascal being casted as Reed Richards, which made no sense, and the generic looking costumes all kind of remain criticisms of mine. But it's definitely a lot more preferable than most of the Marvel stuff out right now. I'm not a huge fan of how they completely left out Norrin Radd in this entire movie, or he's kind of just unmentioned throughout the whole movie. And this is you got a Silver Surfer, and Norrin Radd is supposed to be the Silver Surfer, so it doesn't make sense to take his love interest Shala Ball just because there was one small storyline where she became a Silver Surfer too, temporarily, and then she got killed off a few issues later after that fact. But yeah, so that doesn't make any sense to me. And I get it's probably to kind of be like, oh well, it happened in the comics. Yeah, but we all kind of wanted Norrin Radd though, But yeah, because you got to keep in mind, even outside of the Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, he's still a very high level. He was actually definitely a very high level character back in the 90s and the 2000s. He had his own cartoon. He had a video game. He had a long-going comic book line, and we could have actually had gotten a Silver Surfer movie if it wasn't canceled due to the reception of Rise of the Silver Surfer. But even despite the reception that Rise of the Silver Surfer had kind of gotten, I feel like Silver Surfer was definitely well acted by Lawrence Fishburne, or voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, and the guy that they had modeling for Silver Surfer, he was that was really great, and he was definitely a huge highlight of the movie and stuff. So The only real reason that people just didn't really like Rise of the Silver Surfer, really, that movie, was because of how they portrayed Galactus as like a giant dark cloud. But I'll get into that later, though. Other than that, it's a solid movie, but that's just me. But anyways, that aside, Pedro Pascal's performance, what do I think about it? Honestly, I think his performance was probably the most underwhelming and the weakest compared to everything else. Like, and that's not just me just saying that out of bias because technically he's a race swap version of Reed Richards in this version. But he's definitely poked fun at a lot. Like, as the man might as well be wearing a kick me sign on him. He's very soft spoken, and usually he's kind of just very unsure of himself. Granted, I understand that he's up against Galactus, but Jesus, this man has like zero confidence in whatever he's doing most of the time, for what it sounds like. Even when he rambles about like science and stuff, it doesn't really seem like he's like all that intellectual, you know? Because Reed is definitely supposed to be somebody that's a lot more assertive and someone that who likes to kind of hear himself talk. Even during Secret Wars and stuff in the comic, which I'm going to be referencing that comic throughout the video, since I'm not a huge I'm not an active Fantastic Four reader, but I'm starting to kind of get into it a little bit. And I recently just read Secret Wars. Ironically, actually, the day I finished up reading it the day before Jim Shooter had passed away, which is crazy. But anyways, Reed is definitely considered to be like, you know, a really great leader, where he was actually kind of the second option next to like Captain America to like lead like the greatest Marvel heroes at the time back in the 80s and stuff, you know, which would include the X-Men, the Avengers, Spider-Man, even Thor himself, you know, a Thunder God, you know, and Mr. Fantastic was considered second compared to all of them to actually lead the team and stuff, but instead, you know, he turned it down because, you know, he wasn't sure he had like his head in the game because, you know, he had a pregnant wife at home and a son, so it's kind of like hard to focus. So he thinks that maybe mentality wise Captain America would probably be the better fit, so he gave it up to him. So yeah, and during the event, like, you know, the Thing and Human Torch, like if you actually read Secret Wars and stuff, like they were like religiously following like Reed and wouldn't do anything without his okay, his approval, which really shows you how much they really believe in his like leadership skills, and like he really has like that type of charisma. Even when like everyone was like about to like be like crushed to death by like a giant mountain and stuff, everyone was just returning to like Reed Richards and stuff. They're like, "Hey, Reed, you gotta wake up, man," because they were trapped and they needed somebody to kind of think of a way to get them out of this situation and stuff, you know? Because like yeah, and then Reed, as soon as he woke up after Molecule Man had dropped a mountain on them and stuff, yeah, like Reed, he came up with a way because even though you might have some smart guys like Bruce Banner, you know, the Hulk there, because at the time he had the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but the body of the Hulk. But because of this whole situation, he's kind of losing his intelligence, and he's also not as strong as he is as the Hulk. So that's a problem. And then you have Iron Man there as well, but it's actually War Machine, you know, aka James Rhodes, not Tony Stark and stuff there. So everybody's like, okay, we need Reed Richards, man. He needs to you know what I mean? Like they were really like yeah. And as soon as Reed got up, and as soon as like they were all about to get crushed to death, Reed came up with a way to like use like some of like Spider-Man's like web shooters and like some of the circuits inside Iron Man's armor, and was able to use it to like blast out the mountain and stuff. So yeah, he's a very, very resourceful and a very like reliable kind of guy. But yeah, and even though he's not exactly the most flashiest kind of character, or he might be the weakest member of the group power wise, but the thing about Reed Richards is like his mind and his importance is definitely on a different level. So Pedro, he doesn't really come off like that way to me as far as like that goes, compared to like some of the other actors that have portrayed Reed Richards, with the exception of Fan Forstick, because anything is better than Fan Forstick. I'm telling you that, even Pedro. So I would give him credit there at least. Also, I wasn't really a fan of how they were kind of utilizing his elastic powers, which were kind of like displayed, like, you know, like I wasn't really a fan of how that was displayed either. Like in the 2005 movie, which I'm going to be referencing the 2005 movie a lot. In the 2005 movie, he was able to definitely like do things like wrap around people, curl into balls. He was able to do like a little cartwheel thing, turn into like this giant like little blanket or whatever. He can do all that stuff, like, you know, or stretch certain parts of his body like cartoonishly and stuff, you know, and that's in a good way. So yeah, they were able to definitely get that right back in the 2005 and 2007 movie. But here, I mean, he's not really doing any of that stuff. I don't I don't even think there's a certain part where he's even wrapping around anyone. It's just like, oh, he stretches his arms and his legs out, kind of like a, sort of like a toy, kind of like you remember like Sonic Unleashed with like Sonic the Werehog, where like Sonic in that Werehog form. Basically, he can like stretch out his arms to like grab on certain platforms and stuff like that, or do it in a cartoonishly like way, just without. Just imagine that, just without the super strength, basically with Reed Richards, pretty much. So it's just like yeah. So I'm not really a fan of how they like showed that how they showed his powers and stuff in this movie. And I'm still not really a fan of the costumes either, except for maybe on Sue, where I don't really think that Ben should really be covered up, or at least not like sleeveless, because usually Ben's usually wearing like his boxers, or he's wearing like pants or whatever, but he's usually like shirtless or whatever, because he's a more of a brawler and stuff, where he's like this guy is big and all that stuff. Yeah, and most clothes can't really fit him. Or at best, he should be wearing like a sleeveless T-shirt or something like that, like he was wearing in the Ultimate Comics. That's what I think they probably should have gone with versus just put him in a full body suit, which is kind of weird. But I mean, yeah, but it's all right though. I guess. I mean, it's whatever. Reed and Johnny, they also didn't seem to really match or look impressive either to me. But those are just my cons, and I do have a few nitpicks as well, like bringing Sue along while she's kind of pregnant, because even like I don't know why they did that, because even in the comics, like Sue has been pregnant and stuff before, and she's sat out on missions and stuff because that would be endangering the baby and stuff like that. So I don't know why they thought, hey, let's bring let's bring pregnant Sue into space or whatever, to meet up with Galactus so we can negotiate peace for the planet's survival. I don't know. I don't know, but it is what it is. It didn't bother me too much, but I was just like, okay, that's a little bit weird. I mean, it's not as worse or it's not as terrible as like that, like as what they did in Across the Spider-Verse, what they did with Spider-Woman, where she was like pregnant and stuff, and she was trying to fight Miles, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is stupid. Yeah, so it's a lot. But anyways, that aside though, that's just a nitpick though. And my other nitpicks as well is like the conference meeting after like they kind of returned to like Earth and stuff. Because honestly, I think Reed honestly would have, and he should have definitely had lied or fabricated something about some of the details and left out their son. Because Reed just basically like spilt the beans and everything. He spilled the tea. He told everybody exactly what happened, and that Galactus demanded their son Franklin Richards, so that he would spare the Earth and all that stuff. And then the people turned on him. I would have definitely had lied. I would have been like, yeah. So basically, Galactus asked for like cosmic power and stuff, or some kind of cosmic whatever, and we just don't have that for him. So we're gonna have to come up with some kind of strategy to defeat him and all that, and we're gonna need your cooperation. I would have been like that. Honestly, I would have just kept it like that, or something along those lines at least. Okay, but telling everybody everything, yeah, you're gonna kind of have everybody freak out. So that's also a nitpick that I had there too, and stuff. I was like, yeah, of course people are gonna like, be divided. Where you're like, oh, you're sacrificing our families and our livelihood to protect your son and all that. So I mean, I get it. It's a more of an amoral kind of thing, but I mean, but as a parent, like, well, I'm not a parent, but I'm just saying, like, if you were a parent or something like that, yeah, no, you're not gonna give up your son or your daughter to some cosmic being and stuff. I mean, maybe. I mean, it's not like it is wrong, but it's like it's a moral decision and stuff for like, yeah, for self-preservation and stuff. But yeah, I mean, but honestly, I feel like Reed and Sue and the Fantastic Four, they've done so much for the planet and stuff where they deserve a little bit of selfishness, because obviously that's their son, which is that's their world right there and all that. And to like give up their son to save the world and stuff is kind of like, okay, you're asking way too much for them, after all the good things that they've done for the planet. So that's just how I feel on that subject matter though. But those are basically my cons that I have for the movie. So I'm gonna start getting into the pros. I feel the movie respects the characters, where they're not just established but respected as the world's greatest heroes. At first, from the trailers, I thought that it was kind of forced that people like them, but it's definitely refreshing to see them like get some like love, and then they kind of fall from grace for that, like for just a moment. Like I actually liked Old Man's inclusion definitely, as a movie, like as a past villain and stuff, kind of turned more like a neutral character. later on, kind of like Pied Piper from the Flash comics, or like M'Baku from Black Panther. Although I really felt like M'Baku should have, or Manape should have just stayed as a villain, honestly, and we could have gotten like him as a potential villain in a future movie. But that's just me. But anyways, Mole Man though, yeah, I'm glad to definitely see Mole Man and stuff, because he's the Fantastic Four's first villain. So I mean, I definitely prefer him being utilized this way than just a main antagonist throughout like an entire movie. You know, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you want like a main antagonist or a main villain for a Fantastic Four, Fantastic Four movie, obviously you want somebody like Doctor Doom, Galactus, possibly Molecule Man or something, Annihilus, the Frightful Four. In my opinion, I think the Frightful Four could actually make some pretty, like, if you do a movie and stuff, I think that would be pretty cool if they just go up against them, etc. Like, Super Scroll, definitely, yeah, Super Scroll, you know. Like, I feel like those are definitely some like major characters that could definitely be like main villains. But Mole Man, not so much. Maybe for like a cartoon episode or something, or for like if they did like a streaming series and he's like a villain for like a one-off episode, sure. But not as a main villain though. Not as a main villain. I'm like, yeah, no, I think I'm good on that. But I mean, but I like seeing him definitely as an early villain. And he's just used as a warm up. That's what I'd rather than just utilize him for. Like they fight him in the beginning, which yeah, it is shown in the beginning that they're fighting like that. Like that iconic first cover of where they're fighting one of his monsters and stuff like that, and everything. But I feel like, yeah, well, you should have opened up with that a little bit, where they're fighting him to kind of show off their abilities and their teamwork and stuff, and then we can kind of jump in more into the movie and stuff like that. That's just my opinion though of what I would have done. But yeah. Then of course Joseph Quinn, he was an okay Johnny Storm, aka Human Torch, but it doesn't top Chris Evans for me, and that's because like Chris was actively pulling pranks and stuff, and he was definitely more of a ladies' man and stuff like that. And he was really trying to capitalize off the Fantastic Four and stuff like that, which is kind of like in spirit with Johnny Storm as a character. But Joseph Quinn's version to me, like I just feel like he just needed a little bit more, like he needed to be a bit more toned. Since I mean, after all, he is following up after Captain America himself, so it's like, yeah, he needs to look like really good if he's gonna be like Johnny Storm, where like you're like, oh man, this guy's a badass. Oh man, this guy's picking up women and stuff. You gotta, that's just how I feel about that. So I feel like he needed to kind of work out more, But that's just me. And a few nitpicks that I also kind of had was like it was kind of his room, which I kind of felt like they should have really decorated his room a little bit more. Like since this is in the 1960s, they could have put up some rock posters and stuff, like some rock music posters and stuff like that, or some guitars, probably some girl or car magazines somewhere. That's how I feel like Johnny Storm's room should be kind of set up, where it's like, damn, this is like a like a bad boy kind of, you know what I mean? Because that's Johnny Storm, because all he had was like a chair, a space helmet, and some papers and stuff, or a vinyl scratch, and then or a record player or whatever, and a painting of himself. That's really about it. So I just feel like, well, if you gotta want to flesh out his character a little bit more, I feel like you should have gone with what I just said than just this kind of looks a little boring in my opinion. But that's just me. And then my last nitpick is also, I feel like Johnny's powers definitely should be definitely burning through his clothes and stuff. Because I know the Fantastic Four have clothes that are tailor made to them, specifically their costumes and stuff, but not all of their clothes are like tailor made to their costumes. So it's kind of weird how he's like flamed on, and his clothes aren't like affected because Johnny doesn't have that level of like control or manipulation when it comes to his fire powers. Where, he can also protect his clothes from getting burnt up or whatever. That doesn't really make any sense. Sure, in an anime it can definitely make sense, but I don't know, just in here I don't think that makes any sense. So it's like, yeah, because if he's like, flaming on, obviously he should be in his costume or something, But what I did definitely like was that he definitely learned, like he had that moment where he learned an entire alien language in under a week, and he was definitely able to like kind of reason with the surfer, which is kind of like ironic because in the old movie Sue Storm was actually the one that actually, kind of did the same thing almost with in Rise of Silver Surfer, where she kind of reached out with Norrin Radd and stuff, and had kind of talked to him or convinced him to turn against Galactus. But in this version, it's actually given to Johnny Storm, her brother, who helps Shia LaBeouf turn against Galactus this time around. So yeah, but I also kind of like the banter that he also had with Ben and Reed sometimes, in some instances, which kind of plays on a little bit on his immaturity for a bit, where he's like a little bit jokey, quirky, and stuff. You know, it's not really the same as like what I was saying with Chris Evans, where he was definitely pulling pranks and stuff, or he definitely had that charisma, in my opinion, where he had that spirit of like, yeah, this is somebody that's very immature and does things that he's not supposed to be doing. Here, he like this version of Johnny, he's kind of like, you know, he's a little funny guy and stuff like that. Kind of like reminds me of like Michelangelo from the 1990 TMNT movie, where him and Donnie will be like, you know, chilling, and then Raph and Leo are gonna argue, and they're like, "Oh, great, here they go again," and then, you know, that's kind of how it comes off with Johnny, for me at least. You know, I also kind of like the scene where him and Ben are just in the kitchen and stuff, and Ben is like, "All right, we're about to eat this meal," and then Johnny in the kitchen eating cereal and stuff. He's like, you're about to spoil your appetite. Why are you eating cereal before we're about to have dinner?" Like, you know, so that was kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie, I like that. But yeah, or like when you like Reed was like, "I don't have a 215." He was like, "Oh, that 215." And then yeah, Johnny comes in and he's like, "Reed, I'm telling you, we need new uniforms, new spacesuits, and everything." You know, so there were things I definitely liked about Joseph Quinn as Human Torch. But yeah, and then of course there was Sue Storm. Now, Sue honestly was definitely one of the best characters actually in this movie, and it wasn't like it was over pushed like I anticipated, because in the recent years with typical like MCU and all that, they have definitely been trying really hard to kind of overglaze and overpush characters like the Scarlet Witch or Carol Danvers and stuff, for like giving Thanos a difficult time. So hopefully this doesn't become that fixed point just because Sue was able to push back Galactus and stuff, which, don't get me wrong, very badass moment and definitely very believable. Don't get me wrong. It is a very, like, I do believe that yes, Sue can definitely, and she has and she can definitely do that. But I just don't like how, like, you know how like Wanda, when she was like she was pretty much beating the hell out of Thanos that in that one moment, because she was mad that Thanos killed Vision, and was like, "I don't even know who you are." And she's like, "Well, you'll remember me," and stuff. And she was like, you know, using her telekinesis and was like overpowering Thanos and stuff like that for a while. Yeah, I get it. But I mean, but you don't gotta like remind us every time, you know. Oh yeah, remember when that time when Wanda did that and stuff like that, or Carol when she was like, "Oh, I think she really gave Thanos the most difficulty," and I'm just like, "Oh my god, please stop." So I hope this doesn't become one of those things with Sue, you know, because yeah, I mean, I do feel like it was a good moment, but they can easily ruin it later. But yeah, but in truth, she's definitely the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, believe it or not. But I just don't kind of want them to, like, you know, just be to the point where, and this is like what I was saying, my problem was, I don't want it to be to the point where she just does everything on her own, where she's, oh, well, you know, she's smart enough to get by, she's the strongest, she don't need no man, etc. You know, it's like, yeah. And to kind of give an idea, Sue has also created barriers and stuff too, like just to give an idea of like Sue's power level and stuff. She has created barriers that have protected both Ben and Johnny. And keep in mind, Ben, aka the Thing, he's comparable to the Hulk, where him and Hulk, even though Ben's not stronger than the Hulk, but there have been times where Ben has hurt the Hulk, or he has definitely given a good fight to him and stuff, meaning that they're comparable. Or Johnny, who is like a literal supernova in itself. So whatever can hurt them or whatever, basically her constructs can protect them and stuff, you know. And I've definitely seen comics where Sue is definitely beating characters like even Wolverine and Venom and stuff like that, with no difficulty. So she's very powerful in general, but that's just me. But power scaling and stuff aside, Vanessa Kirby was definitely a great casting, and not only that, but she was definitely a powerhouse. Also gave some like good speeches and stuff too. Ben Grimm was also pretty cool. He was a very good character and well animated. I have a respect for Michael Chillis and stuff, who, you know, he was a huge, like Michael Chillis, he was a huge fan of the Thing and stuff when he was growing up from the old movies and stuff. And physically, you know, he portrayed the character and all that stuff with practical effects. Like, they actually used makeup and stuff on him to look like the Thing. And I'm like, that's very cool. Like when you actually look at the behind the scenes and stuff like that, it's really cool. Hell yeah. And honestly, sometimes even that is a lot more respectable than CGI, because it's a lot more consistent and you can kind of do a little bit more stuff with the character and stuff compared to like CGI all the time. That's why some of the complaints here, and I'm not shitting on the CGI entirely in this movie, mostly with Reed's stretchy powers, but on the Thing and Galactus, Silver Surfer, I wasn't really feeling the CGI to be honest with Silver Surfer, but Galactus and the Thing character models, oh yeah, they look great, but you know, there are some complaints where people are like, well, they weren't in the movie a lot or as shown too much and stuff like that. And that's probably because of the limitations with the CGI models sometimes, you know. But it is what it is, you know. Not to mention how Michael Chillis was also capable enough to kind of change his voice from like from his normal talking voice to sounding like the Thing back in the old movie. So I think that was pretty cool. But Ebon Musk, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Bacharacha, I know I messed up his name, but he also did a good performance too. You know what I mean? Like honestly, I still think he does sound like more like Johnny than he does with Ben. But the CGI, like I said, the CGI model was really good and stuff. It looked pretty cool. And even though I kind of wasn't a fan of the beard, because at first I thought that was like an inconsistent moment from the trailers and stuff. I'm like, did they give him a Thanos chin and stuff? But it turns out, oh, okay, it actually is a beard, actually, like everybody was saying it was. I was like, okay. It kind of grew on me. I was like, oh, well, you know what? It's not really half bad after all. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure he got rid of it by now, so it is what it is. But I also kind of liked how they, like, touched up on, like, his Jewish roots and stuff, too, and his urban background as well. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that people don't know about Ben Grimm if you watch the movies or even seen the cartoons and stuff, because like if you don't know, like yeah, Ben, he's Jewish. He grew up in the hood and stuff like that. Ben's a pilot too, by the way, and he was actually in the Air Force originally back when, since the comics were set in the 1960s. Ben actually was, and he did actually fight in World War II and stuff. But obviously they had retconned the World War II part out. But yeah. But Ben is definitely been like that, you know. So that's pretty cool. And I also like the homage to like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. This is another pro who had both made a cameo and stuff, if anyone had not noticed that. Even though it was obvious, you know, actors / interpreters and stuff kind of just shown briefly, but I thought that was definitely pretty cool that they showed Stan Lee and Jack Kirby real quick and whatnot, just working on some Fantastic Four stuff together. That was kind of cool. But yeah, and not to mention, it was definitely nice seeing Franklin Richards finally in live action. They could have shown his powers in a bit of a better light, in my opinion. But I am looking forward to seeing what they will do more with him in the future, since he is definitely a high level reality warper, and on top of that, he's a mutant. In case anyone don't know, you know, because his X gene was probably awakened due to the cosmic rays that his parents had gotten their powers and stuff, kind of much like Beast or Professor X from the X-Men. Because in case you guys don't know, Beast and Professor X, their dads, Beast's dad and Professor X's dad, they've worked at they worked around radiation and nuclear power plants and stuff like that. So them being around all that stuff had kind of awakened the X gene within their children and stuff like that they ended up their sons had ended up inheriting. So that's why Professor X is a psychic and why he's a mutant, and definitely for Beast why he's also a mutant as well. And on top of that, Beast had also used chemicals and stuff because he wanted to cure himself of being a mutant. But, you know, he kind of made it worse. And that's how we got the Beast that we all kind of know, with the blue fur and the lion kind of looking look, instead of his normal humanoid look with the monkey feet and all that stuff that he had back in the 60s. But, yeah. Now imagine, okay, these guys are, Reed and Sue are hit by cosmic rays. And, you know, that's a kind of a valid explanation as to why Franklin is as powerful as he is, you know. So just wanted to put that out there. And I also liked the cameo from Doctor Doom in the end. I was kind of like, oh shit. When I saw Doctor Doom, I was like, oh, there you are. Because, you know, yeah. And not to mention, I kind of liked his absence too from the world leaders meeting and stuff. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I was kind of when I saw that, I was like, Doctor Doom is hating. He didn't want to show up to this press conference because he only liked the Fantastic Four. Yeah, it reminds me of this one episode of Fantastic Four where basically the world, the other countries of the world was asking the Fantastic Four for help, except for one country, and they're like, let me guess, Latveria. Yeah, because Doom would never ask the Fantastic Four for help like that. No. But anyways, or think that they can do something that he can't do. Like, nah, Doom's just too arrogant for that. Like, no. But anyways, Galactus, he was also pretty good here too. I haven't really talked about Galactus yet, but yeah, but he's definitely been definitely long overdue. He's Marvel versus Capcom's 3's final boss. It's good that he's finally getting some spotlight in a movie and stuff. I know Rise of Silver Surfer and stuff. They did that Cloud thing, but what a lot of people don't know is that Galactus was actually in the Cloud. It wasn't actually like he wasn't the actual Cloud itself, and they were trying to save the Galactus thing for a Silver Surfer movie, but it got canceled. But they should have gone with it anyways, because I'm pretty sure people still would have. Trust me, they would have showed up for a Silver Surfer movie and to see Galactus. Oh, you sign me up. But all that kind of got scrapped, and then the Fantastic Four 3 got scrapped. So yeah, so finally, it's definitely been a long overdue wait to finally see Galactus and stuff. I just kind of wish that we would have saw his heralds also kind of appear to kind of make up some numbers as well, like kind of like Thanos' army from like Infinity War and Endgame. But I mean, maybe that's still on the table. We hopefully might see them kind of return and stuff. I want to see. I definitely want to see Galactus definitely return. I hope he's not going to be like a one-off villain, kind of like how they treated Dormammu in Doctor Strange, because he showed up in Doctor Strange, and then Dormammu was kind of like guy was gone for like the entire like for ever since like I think 2016. Like yeah, Dormammu's been gone. So I was like, man, like what happened? So yeah, so those are just my pros for the movie. Now, what is my overall score? I give this basically a smooth 8 out of 10. Or in my rating, it's a B pretty much in my book. I had definitely had my problems from the get go, anyways. But after watching it, I kind of like it's sort of kind of come to peace with it. That it's not as good. Like it's a pretty good self-contained movie. I'll take this definitely as a resurgence, definitely over like what Marvel's been trying to do with like stuff like the Eternals, the Inhumans, or whatever Marvel's trying to do to be like the next it thing and stuff like that, or all new, all different, and all that stuff. Because the Fantastic Four, honestly, they definitely deserve this more, since their lore and their characters have definitely been scattered across like the board, or their villains and stuff have been scattered across like stuff with Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff, Captain Marvel, or even Nick Fury and stuff like stuff like the Skrulls, the Kree, Ronan the Accuser, like all that stuff. They've been scattering all that stuff across the board with the Fantastic Four. So it's like, yeah, because those are the things that they normally deal with and all that stuff. So it's kind of like weird to just pass that along to just them. Now, do I think that is better than the Fox movies? No, not really. But it's up there though, you know. And I understand like, why don't you like it better than the Fox movies? The Fox movies are horrible. Not really. They're underrated. It's just because those movies were sandwiched between those Spider-Man movies and the X-Men movies and stuff that were coming out at the time. So of course it kind of got like, you know, yeah. And usually since people haven't seen it in like let's say over 20, 18 years and stuff, people kind of listen to other people on the internet and stuff that trash the movie and stuff because they just did Galactus poorly. But other than that, casting's perfect, the characterization is perfect with the Fox movies. Even the costumes are even better to stuff that we have today. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, I still prefer the Fox movies more so. But honestly, yeah, this movie is definitely up there and stuff. I would definitely say that this movie is definitely visually better because we see like them in space and black holes and stuff like that. Or we got that scene where Silver Surfer was kind of like riding around, like what was it, or interstellar travel and stuff like that. We get Galactus and everything. So all that stuff, yeah, it definitely has all that stuff going for it. That's definitely true. So I definitely like that, definitely. But yeah, but yeah, but anyways, but why do I think that pretty much? I mean, because I mean, when you really think about it, this movie really is just a rehash of Rise of Silver Surfer. Just exchange the wedding that Sue and Reed had for Sue's pregnancy. Reverse Sue and Johnny's roles basically for convincing the Silver Surfer to join their side and turn against Galactus. And like in both versions and stuff, Sue does die and she comes back to life, you know? So it's kind of the same old, or the same, you know? But I'm not complaining though. I mean, yeah, I'm not complaining. It is a reboot and it is kind of like, all right, well, still, I'll take it though. I mean, I still like it, you know, regardless. But we definitely did get more like space scenes and stuff, and definitely an accurate Galactus who wasn't a cloud and stuff, even though he was inside the cloud. and different time periods where one is set in between the 2000s and stuff, and one is set in the 1960s. So, yeah, all that was pretty cool though. I'm not gonna lie. So between this and Marvel Rivals and stuff, I feel like Marvel definitely needs to put more promotion into like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men more because they have the rights to that now, sort of. And definitely drop all those like kiddie shows that they got going on, like Spider-Man and his amazing friends or whatever, and drop all that shit and focus on making spin-offs of stuff like this. Make a spin-off, like make a cartoon or something out of Fantastic Four. Like, we need a new cartoon of Fantastic Four. It's been like, what, since 2006, almost 18, 19 years ago, since we had a cartoon from the Fantastic Four. Or it's been like, what, yeah, it's like, it's been quite a while. You know, I mean, I know they were inside an episode of Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which is pretty cool. But the Fantastic Four, they need some respect. They need a video game or something, etc. You know, like, they need something going on. Silver Surfer needs a spinoff, not Shia LaBeouf. We need to bring in Norrin Rad. He needs, definitely, Norrin Rad needs a movie, or he needs like a cartoon as well, or maybe a something. You know, I'm just saying, just give me something. We need to, like, you know, invest more time into stuff like this versus just picking and choosing. Oh yeah, let's try Ironheart this time. Let's do Agatha. Let's do our own version of the Suicide Squad with the Thunderbolts, and then call it New Avengers by the end of the movie for whatever reason. You know, even though it was a pretty decent movie, it wasn't the best, but it was all right. You know, just, you know. But I'm just saying though. Oh, let's do Shang-Chi. Who? You know. She-Hulk's a cool character, but that entire show ruined She-Hulk. So, yeah, it's a lot. As far as what I'm looking forward to, I kind of want to see Joseph Quinn's Human Torch and Tom Holland's Spider-Man team up, even though I'm not a really huge fan of either of their casting. But I definitely do want to see that Spider-Man, Human Torch friendship or like team up or whatever. I think that'd be cool. You got Webhead and Matchstick or whatever, you know, kind of like in the comics and whatnot, since they like to emphasize the 60s. The Doctor Doom thing, still not really happy about Robert Downey Jr. being casted. I kind of want them to just let that be a red herring or do a bait and switch. This is the only time where I can justify a bait and switch, where I hope they cast somebody else that isn't Robert Downey Jr. That's just me. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to as far as like the future of the Fantastic Four goes. So, but tell me down below what you guys think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is Jello Fox. I'm out. Peace and flame off.